The key to success on the field and in your backyard is a comprehensive game plan. So if you're building a fence or a deck this year, trust a Turkstra coach to design, quote, or order the right materials for your project. Visit a Turkstra Lumber near you to learn more.
From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker.
Welcome back to the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker. Ticats 6-8 coming off a loss in Toronto. 4 games left in the regular season with a bye week mixed in there. As always, send your questions to gameday@ticats.ca to ask Coach O. We'll pick one later on in this episode. Coach, it's an up and down season. Week by week, it's ups, it's downs, and you're still hanging in there and fighting for the playoffs coming off of that tough loss. But maybe we start with the offense in Toronto. Obviously, sort of the elephant in the game was the 2 really damaging interceptions, both leading to Toronto touchdowns. You isolate those plays and remove them. I don't know. What's your take on your offense's efforts in Toronto?
Yeah, we didn't execute well enough. I mean, keen sense of the obvious there, but that's what it was. And you add the safety into there, and all of a sudden you're talking about 16 points. And, but interceptions and takeaways and turnovers are part of football. When you're playing a team that's only showed up in the loss column one time, you're just not afforded that luxury to make those type of mistakes. Fortunately for us, we were able to take the ball away a little bit to offset it, but we just couldn't get it going consistently on offense there. It's disappointing when those games happen. You're going to have a few of those when you're playing an 18-game regular season schedule. The timing of it was disappointing.
Yeah. The early deficit, and especially against a team, like you said, it's 12-1, that's hard to do. It seems to me, I wonder if you agree, that a team that's going to be able to find their way to beating Toronto, you got to get off to a good start. Is that how you see this team as well?
Yeah, and I think that's going to be true for anybody that we play down the stretch. It's going to be important that we keep things within reach, if you will, and we'll focus on Toronto in the East Final. All the focus right now is heading towards Calgary, but I would not disagree with you at all that I think there is something. It is obviously always more important how you finish, but there is something to be said for how you start games. I think sometimes you can set the tempo, and sometimes you can gain momentum.
Yeah. Defensively, you do the same thing. If you take off a 70-yard touchdown pass early in that game that added to that deficit, you have a defense, like you said, they took the ball away. They stopped Chad Kelly at multiple times. They held the Toronto run game to much less than it has been. Are you and Mark Washington breaking that game down? And there's got to be some hopefulness there. You're kind of saying, well, this is actually a team that defensively we could beat if we get the opportunity again.
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of encouraging points there. Obviously, we had a coverage breakdown there on that long one, so we feel like that's something that's very correctable and preventable. It's not like we were in cover 0 there. I think the key stop before the half, keeping it a 2-score game was crucial. Even though the score wasn't what we would have liked it to be, it could have, they were lined up for a field goal for sure, which puts it as a 3-score game right away. And I think in the second half, I think they had 8 possessions, something like that, and we had 6 or 7 2-and-outs. And you can't play much better than that outside of scoring on defense. Yeah. And that's just the defense did what they had to do. Special teams, we showed up, but then we took penalties in the return game, and we battled to make it a 2-score game there late, and those are the things you have to do in a game like that. So overall, it was a loss, and it wasn't good enough on that day to beat a team that has now won 12 football games, and that's just what it is. It's a learning experience. It'll have no bearing on us this week. It won't have any bearing in the East Final when we go there. But you're going to have a tough time beating anybody, let alone a team that's that great when you're, it's tough momentum-wise, especially on the road when you're giving up big plays, both sides, in all three phases. But I thought we did a good job of containing Leak. I thought we punted the ball all over the field. We kind of sprayed it a little bit as a game plan, and it prevented him. But he's, they're a solid football team in three phases, and their record reflects it. And we'll learn from it, and we'll move on.
Yeah. Playoff picture is going to start to become more and more clear with each of the last 5 weeks of the season here. 4 games left for your team. Obviously, it's Ottawa and Montreal both getting wins in this past week is sort of makes things a little bit interesting here. But is that playoff picture and that development at all in your meeting rooms or at all in your team's prep as you guys prepare, or is that a distraction?
No, I wouldn't look at it as a distraction. I think you have to give a nice mix, a dose of reality, and then where do you want to focus your time? And so, yeah, I think it's your job to supply the vision and the overview, but the overview is just that. We have to go out here day one practice focused on that, and all the attention after the overview needs to be on Calgary, and then ultimately on ourselves and how we're going to get out of our own way in certain instances and how we're going to capitalize and be better.
Let's talk a little bit about Calgary. They've not had a year that like the Calgary CFL fans have been used to for a decade or so, more than that really. What do you see in that team this week, and maybe as an opportunity to get your Ticats back onto a win streak?
Well, you've got a team that's, for all purposes, I think they're battling for their playoff lives. I know that they're probably resting in the crossover realm, and I think a loss anywhere down the stretch here puts it tough for them. So, I expect them to come out with anything and everything, and playing like that. And that's about as much focus as we can really put on them. All right. It's preparing, understanding that, everything could be up. Onside kicks, fakes, throwing the ball deep, going for it on third down. That's kind of where they're at in their season. And you take that as information. But after that, you focus on yourselves, make sure our people are prepared for the majority of situations. There's no way you can be prepared for every situation. And the one thing we won't do is play timid or back up. We're going to attack and play our game, but when you're attacking, you must be aware of your opponent in certain circumstances.
Coach, we're well, as we've said, we're nearing the end of this regular season here, and one thing we haven't touched on much on our conversations here together is the injuries, at least not since early on this season. And as this year's progressed, as you've gotten through the hump of the season here, how would you rate your team's health as you're starting to get ready to go into to playoffs here?
That's an interesting question. I would say that we are not particularly healthy at some spots. And some of it do. And the reason I say that is, week to week, it's what it is. But if we really went through it, you got to include the people that are on 6-game, ones that won't be returning that we lost. And so, it's a valid point to talk about, but I always like to put on my dancing shoes when it comes to these, because injuries are part of the game. It's all injuries. Sometimes they're not equal. Sometimes a team loses a leader that's not a great statistical person. Sometimes they lose their quarterback, their starting quarterback. Sometimes they lose their backup starting quarterback. Sometimes they lose a starting left tackle. Sometimes, it's just all injuries may be equal, maybe with total numbers, but what those injuries mean to to each football team is different. Mm-hmm. And I can say that we've had our fair share in all areas. That's what I'm most proud of, though. If you kind of look at a lot of the acquisitions and where we've been decimated, somehow we found a way to put ourselves in a position to be in the playoffs, possibly host a playoff game. And at this time of year, when you still control your own destiny despite adversity, it's a proud moment. Yeah, we want to be 18-0. We would love to be in Toronto's situation and you're clinched and have a Y by your name, not just an X. Absolutely. But when that's not your reality, how are you responding? And I'm super proud of our response. Ultimately, it's got to show up in the win column, but I won't waver from the job that the organization, the staff, and the commitment that the players have had to put ourselves in a situation still to win a Grey Cup. The ultimate goal remains the same, but all focus goes to day one of practice today and our home game against Calgary on Saturday.
Good, great stuff, Coach. Let's get to a fan question here. This fan question this week is from Robert. Again, listeners, you can send your questions to Coach O at gameday@ticats.ca, and we may select your question to ask Coach on next week's episode. Robert today says, Coach, the Hamilton receiving core is starting to look good as Godwin, Smith, and others are getting catches and yards. I wonder when players begin to see the ball. I wonder if players begin to see the ball more as a result of a coach wanting to spread the ball around and change an offensive approach, or as a result of that player standing out as a result of his development. Go Ticats.
Robert, there's a lot packed in there. That's a very fair question, and I'm just going to try to rehash it here in my mind. And it's, is it a concerted effort to get certain people the football? I think the answer would be unequivocally yes in some areas where I think that's where you kind of get labels as, hey, he's a number 1 receiver, he's a number 2 receiver, he's a 3, he's a support guy. But I think oftentimes, Luke, I don't know where people would have ranked you. There's most of the times, and there's some games when there's no doubt you were an intended target and you were won that game. There's other times it was Speedy. It might have been Braylon, and you were surrounded by fan twos. And when you have that many good people, sometimes, and then you have quarterbacks that can get through their progressions quicker sometimes, and they can sweep through. So I do think that there's sometimes you're attacking matchups, Robert, where you're saying that, hey, we're going to go once a quarter, we're going to throw a deep ball, and that's going to be to our X or our Z. Doesn't matter who it is. We're going after a certain DB. In the instance of Keandre Smith, a lot like Tim the week before, he was hot. And I don't know that it mattered who was out there. He just found there, and he developed a relationship. I'm pretty sure, on the majority of those, he's probably not the first read on the majority of them, but he found a way to make the most of the opportunities. And so I guess what I'm saying is we didn't have an intention to target Keandre 9 times in that game, but he did get targeted 9 times. So sometimes it's a concerted effort, Robert. Sometimes it's just the way the game flows. And sometimes it's the coverage that they're playing. If they're playing man or zone a lot, we're going to change our play calling a little bit. Yeah.
Interesting question. Gives me a little bit of a chicken and egg concept as well. Like, you got to have trust there, but also, when you're hot, or when it's the day that when your number's called, and if you can do it, then it happens again. So, good question, Robert. Thank you for that. Again, you can send your questions to Coach at gameday at ticats.ca. Coach, best of luck as you get ready for Calgary this week at Tim Hortons Field. Day 1 today with a week of practice ahead. The Coach O Show with Luke Tasker is presented by Turkstra Lumber. Check out the project coaches at Turkstra Lumber. They can help with every part of your home reno, from designing a deck to ordering a new front door. Learn more at TurkstraLumber.com. Coach, thanks a lot and best of luck with your week.
I appreciate it, Luke. We'll see you next week.
Another episode of the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker is in the books. Let us know your thoughts. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Coach O and Luke are back next week to discuss the latest from the locker room. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.